Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel for the Farm School and ELI program here at Permaculture Skills Center. So this is week 3. Classes are going to be Sunday through Wednesday now. We had a good morning talking about some of like the holistic context of the world, the food systems, everything's kind of all connected together. But today in the afternoon we're going to begin our practicum at this farm behind me. Katie is our teacher here. She's also the farmer here at the Permaculture Skills Center. I think there's about 3 farms here that are working farms. And so part of our program is hands-on work in these farms. So we're going to do some cleanup and do some prep here on the farm as part of our experience. Get to experience what it's really like to be a farmer. So come on, we'll check it out.
Okay, so my thought is, I just said to the crew that was here, I think that at minimum we can at least get this entire side of the field done. So what I think we're going to do, about half of this part was already done, so we won't all start in line, but my idea is that we're just going to start at this end and everyone's going to get into a row and you're going to move down and you're going to weed out the pathway that you're in, and you're going to weed out in the bed space around you, around each place that like on either side. So 2 people will essentially be weeding 1 bed, and you know, you'll be weeding like half of 2 different beds and the pathway that you're in. Some of it'll be hard, like the summer squash, you won't obviously need to weed inside, but there's grasses to start with. And then each bed will have some specifications kind of what's actually going to happen. So what I think we'll do is like kind of all pick a spot, and then I'll just come through really quick and we'll go over like, okay, you're going to pull all of the spinach out of this bed and you're going to pull all the peas out. This one you're just going to be weeding the pathway and weeding around the onions, those kind of things.
Roads are expensive in their implementation, but then also they're expensive again in their management and their maintenance and in their lack of maintenance. If we do put a road on a ridge, we have the ability to keep the road drier longer throughout the year. And if you're thinking about if you're on this ridge right here and you're traveling along it, you have the ability to monitor what's going on in the fields below on both sides, whereas if you're on a road that's cross-sloped, you might have a much more limited view of what's going on in your property. And there's actually some grant money out there from different organizations like the RCDs, and I think maybe the NRCS has some programs where they will help you fund the design and implementation of some of these systems too. So that is something you can consider, and it won't necessarily fall on. As Ariel was saying, sun and wind can be a burden for livestock and also crops with desiccation. And windbreaks and shelter belts are something that we could place in our systems to mitigate that, and there is actually some design considerations for these. You can see that there's that angle there, that 60-degree angle, and that layered system is much better than just a single tree or bush, which actually can have an effect. I believe it is the Coriolis effect, where the wind hits, and what would happen is the wind could hit here, but if it's going like this, it sends it up and then it goes. And it can go up to 20 times the distance of the height. However, if it just hits a impervious surface, like say a fence, what'll happen is it'll get to it and then it'll circle down like that, create like a little wind eddy, and then things that are just on the other side of the fence can actually get hammered even harder.
Well, there's a few categories of fencing. There's perimeter and interior, so this is going to be, you know, a lot of properties have fences right along their property line, sometimes not along their property line, but claiming it is. And then interior fencing might be stuff like, let's say you have a legacy barbed wire fence surrounding a ranch property, but you put a garden in on the interior of your property, you're probably, depending on your area, going to want an additional fence around that garden to keep deer and clear a 5.5-foot barbed wire fence from, invading and eating your crops. So some really important considerations for fences. I put aesthetics there first. That's not the most important consideration, but I think it's the one that is very easy to overlook. And I just want to say, we've all looked out across scrappy new farms that have T-posts that are askew and different colors and bent, and you can work with portable modular material, but still, whether through your selection of products or whether through painting it or coating it after the fact, make it look decent. Not necessarily so much to your eye, so much as the eye of the neighbor who you want to be on your side.
Or your U-pick customers.
Or your U-pick customers, exactly. So keep in mind that maybe you're not just producing a product that's going to go off the farm, but maybe the farm itself is some kind of product in its own right. Fences should reflect your context and your goals. Again, it's really easy, just like the map is not the territory, it's easy to make your fence selections based on what is readily available down at the hardware store, but I would encourage you to look a little bit further beyond what you can just load up in your pickup that day. A lot of times you can get stuff, you can get in on an order, maybe you have to wait a month to put in the material that you really want, but it's worthwhile. Until drilling seed into that crop residue for maybe a barley crop that you're going to harvest and sell, and then at the same pasture maybe seeding something else and then running animals again. So that takes an incredible amount of coordination, and that's why planned grazing is so crucial. Planned grazing is sort of it's a term that emerged from the holistic management scene from Alan Savory, and it's this idea that we can take everything that emerges from our holistic context, and that's everything that we need financially, everything that we value and care about, and put it into an actual grazing chart. You can go to the next slide.
Can you just quickly distinguish that from rotational grazing?
Sure. Rotational grazing is just this notion that you are keeping animals on the move. You're not having them on any one place for very long, often in a set specific rotation. And rotational grazing, it's better than leaving animals in what we call a set stock situation, which is where you just do open turnout in a fixed period of land for months on end, if not the whole time. The problem with that is that they're going to overgraze some things and undergraze others, which will reduce the capacity of your land overall. You're going to end up with lots of weedy species and very little grass and forest, especially native grass and forest, that can lead to desiccation, erosion, and desertification. Contrast that to rotational grazing. You're keeping animals moving at the very least. Planned grazing is taking that to the next level, because with planned grazing, you're actually taking things like my family reunion in July, needing to have animals at the corral by mid-May to harvest. The fact that you're running, that you're going to be planting trees in a former pasture in November. You're taking all of these things that you need to do, and you're putting them on an actual chart.
I didn't start off wanting to be a rancher. Really, I started off a lot like a lot of you expressed in the circle, feeling a deep grief that there was people that didn't have that sort of kinship with the land that were the ones making the decisions of how our relatives were being treated. And by relatives, I mean the trees and the birds and the rivers and the plants. And so that's how I came to agriculture. So my background is in wildlife tracking and nature. And then I came to permaculture as a way to find a solution for humans living on this planet. And that's when I met a lot of different permaculture instructors. I met Eric Olson at one of the first Earth activist trainings where him and I were both asked to be instructors with Starhawk. So that was probably almost, 18 years ago or something. So then from there, I found holistic management, and I understand you've been introduced to holistic management, and just this morning with Ariel and the Regrarians platform. So that's great. That's there's a lot of sort of roadmaps to go and different avenues for you to really express these passions and those things that you value in life. For this session, I want to share how I have expressed this deep connection to the land and to nature, and how I have worked that into my context, just as one example of where you can go with this training at farm school. So the principles, essentially knowing that nature functions in wholes. Things don't operate in isolation. And everything affects everything else. And that's the basic understanding that most people are not taught in school. That things tend to be segmented and specialized. So in holistic management, we understand that everything operates in wholes. There's a lot of grasslands in this planet. Grass is amazing. Grass is amazing in so many different ways. Grasslands cover up to 40, some say 45% of the land surface, right? Grasslands have abundant soils, abundant biodiversity, right? And so that's where our family functions. That's our regenerative model, is to enhance these grasslands and to ranch the way a grassland ranches, because the grassland is going to do what it does best, which is photosynthesis of the plants and pulling energy from the sun and feeding the soil through the roots and continuing to grow. So the one thing that grasslands thrive with is disturbance. But properly timed disturbance. And so when we're working with grasslands, we're aiming towards perennials. So on the left you see a grassland that has not had any disturbance for 20 years. And why do you think a lot of the grasslands don't have disturbance anymore? Large herds of ungulates that were moving across the land, the migrations, and right there, huge horsepower, a carbon converter fermentation vat, a mower in the front, a fertilizer at the back, 4 mulchers, the ultimate biological farming unit, right? So yeah, that's a cow, and yeah, it would be cool if they were all bison, or if they were all tule elk and antelope, like what we once had here on our grasslands. But where are we at right now in the present moment, and how can we work with the tools at hand? People are not going to stop eating meat, and I think people eat too much meat, but they can choose to eat less meat and eat really high quality meat. And hopefully, if you haven't been convinced already by this morning presentation and the other presentations, animals are integral to landscapes.
At the point in which I'm able to pay myself and my team a wage, where we're able to have some semblance of personal security to meet our needs for health care for our children, that price all of a sudden is inaccessible to the community that we want to serve, partially. These kind of dynamics, I call it the price parity paradox, or the PPP. For any business or person who's trying to prioritize treating people well and the earth well, finds that their cost of doing business in some cases, in most cases, is higher than the other business person or people who are exploiting people or things. And so bringing a good or a service to a marketplace at price parity with the exploitation economy is an artifact of our time. And so just as a framing concept, not as a prescription. Think about this sometimes, where on the spectrum you fit today and over. This is not fixed. If you're doing midwifery work today, or if you're doing hospice work today, it doesn't mean that you're not going to be part of midwifery work down into the future. And you might be doing a little bit of both at different times. Remember, there's way more, I'm not giving prescription, there's way more resources here, and this is largely invisible, not solely invisible. I just want you to consider that in terms of crafting your strategies about how you're going to produce your work. One thing to note is this price parity paradox. There are pathways through it, and some of them are some of the pathways through the price parity paradox that aren't necessarily super obvious is vertical integration. In the exploitation economy, there's a supply chain, and value gets extracted along a supply chain. And if you collapse that chain into one entity, sometimes you can then capture that and distribute to what are the surpluses that would otherwise be extracted. And that means that you can have living wages for yourself and your team and treat the land well and bring something to market equivalent to what the exploitation economy does. And I've seen that happen a lot. So vertically integrating is one creative strategy. That's just an example, and not, again, not a prescription. There's about 8 pathways that I know through the price parity paradox. But a lot of that is some self-inquiry in terms of where you want to go, and Doniga will help you understand the holistic context where all of this fits. Your enterprise fits within the holistic context, not outside of it. So that's one thing that I hope will become clear. It might sound like jargon or something like that, but it's really important that your enterprise vision is within your holistic